Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, coming at you live on the Fantasyholics Podcast Network on the YouTube channel. I'm Bo. That's Brant. Special episode this week, Brant, for numerous different reasons. It is the 4th of July week. We've got fireworks going on every night in our areas around us. I'm even repping a firework T-shirt for a family friend of ours that does firework shoots for small towns in the area. I got the American flag hat on. I'm feeling patriotic this week. And then on top of that, it's you and I have talked about this before numerous times over, outside of like draft specials covering the NFL draft and things of that nature. This is one of our favorite episodes to put out over the course of the season. We're coming at you guys with hot takes this week. Brant, how are you feeling about hot takes? Because sometimes these can get controversial. And we usually like to set the table by saying we're not necessarily saying we think these things are going to happen for sure. We're saying that it exists within the range of possibilities for these things to happen.
I love this episode. I love doing the hot takes. I love searching through and going, all right, what do I really believe? What am I really on? What are my beliefs? Like, this is really the time for me to put my opinion out there and why, with some statistics to back it up. I love this episode, and it's always good. The last couple of years, you and me have talked about it off air about our hot takes. So this year, I put it in my tablet notes here. I'm going to make sure I hold on to it all season, and we will come back to these come the end of the year and discuss our hot takes this year a little more in depth. But I think it's going to be a fun one this time.
All right. Well, I'm ready to do this. Let's get into it without further ado, Brant. How do you feel about that?
Let's get our bibs on.
Let's eat, baby. All right, Brant. So first of all, I'm super excited that you said you're going to put these into your tablet so we can keep track of these and see how we did next year. But I did mention to you before the show started, I have a few surprises for you. First surprise that I'm going to tell you about, Brant, is I went back and listened to our hot takes episode from last year and jotted down our hot takes and how we did on said hot takes. So I've got it right here to put it on record. I want to see how you feel about your hot takes. I know how I felt about some of mine when I was going back and seeing them. Where do you want to start? Do you want to hear how you did, or do you want to hear how I did?
Absolutely. Let's throw my flame in the fire first.
I will tell you, one of us did significantly better than the other. Okay.
Judging by the giggles, it's not me.
Neither one of us did great. Okay. But here's yours. Number one, Najee Harris to finish as the top 3 running back.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen.
I don't have to pull anything up.
He was only 20 spots away. I'll be 23 on the year. Oh, here's my favorite. I'm going to save that one for last. The one that you got, I'm going to give you half credit on it. It was Dalton Kincaid. You started off by saying he's going to be a top 5 dynasty tight end moving forward. I think you hit that on the nail. Then you, however, went on to go to tell his yards and his touchdowns that you thought he would have. You called for him to have 1,000 yards receiving and 9 touchdowns. He had 673 yards and 2 touchdowns last season. Okay. Are you ready for my absolute favorite one of yours, Grant?
So close.
Are you ready for my favorite one?
Oh, man, it can't be any worse, can it?
Oh, it's worse, my friend. Let me tell you off. This one is going to be horrible, but you started off okay, and then you made it way worse. The Denver Broncos to have 2 top 20 wide receivers. And you were so passionate about your take, you quoted and said, and I quote, Russell Wilson will also be a top 7 quarterback next year. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 35. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 50. Russell Wilson, quarterback number 14 on the season last year, Brant. So, okay, there's yours. I'm going to come over to mine. I will say you did agree with almost all of mine next year. The one you didn't agree with, I'm going to roast you on a little bit. Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback for his bounce back. You were all on board with that. You said you loved it. He finished as quarterback number 3 last year. Hit that one on the head. Here's the other one you agreed with me on totally that I was just ass backwards on, my friend. Cam Akers would be a top 12 running back. He finished as running back number 67 last year. So there you go. One of the Rams running backs was a top 12, just not the one I thought. Here's the one, Brant, that really had me laughing the whole time I was listening to it. I said the Texans were going to have a fantasy breakout last year, but I did start by saying I'm not sure I believe in CJ Stroud. I don't think they're going to make a run at the division. I think this is going to be a lot from playing from behind. So I didn't completely call it, but I said a top 20 running back, a top 36 wide receiver, and a top 15 tight end from that offense last year. Did not have a top 20 running back. They had wide receiver 12 and Nico Collins and tight end 11 and Schultz. So I got 2/3 of that little bit right, but you came out and said right off the jump you don't buy into the Houston Texans offense on this episode last year. We were both wrong. I didn't think it was going to be that good, but we both thought the Texans defense was going to be really good and their offense would just kind of tread water. So there you go, my friend. You don't have to go deep dive for last year's notes. I brought them on. Not great. We both got to do some redemption this year. We got to be a little bit better. We got to back closer to 500 as a show.
All right. That's fine. There's only one that took me it took a while for me to type out because I want to believe it and I feel like it's very in the realm of possibility. But so there's one I'm not 100% agreeing with, but I like it.
Okay. All right. Which one? Oh, of today's.
All right. So we're just going to. Yep.
Kick us off, ready. Man. Kick us off.
All right. My first firework, my bunghole whistler or whatever they're called from the old Joe Dirt, is Ezekiel Elliott will regain his legs this season in Dallas and finish as a top. You know what? I'm going to change it up. Here's where I get myself in trouble. Finishes as a top 15 running back this year again and leads Dallas back to the playoffs. Now, reasoning back this up, we've seen it so many times in his career. Yes, last year was rough for him. He played in 17 games. He was PPR back number 30 and then 22 in 2022. But 7, 9, 3, 5, 13, 2. The year he was 13, he only played in 10 games. There's nothing else in this backfield, really, except for Elliott. You have the tiny guy and Deuce Vaughn, which I absolutely do like. You got Rico Dinwiddie. That's it. So they're going to have to dump the ball off at some point. The receiving core is a little bit banged up. Not banged up. The receiving core is gone with, you got old man Brandon Cooks and you got CeeDee Lamb. Gallup's out the door. The third wide receiver is all up in the air. What stops Elliott from being out there on screen passes, getting the PPR? Top 15 PPR running back. PPR. Let's make sure I get that in there. Top 15 PPR running back this year. And I think he's going to win a lot of people. I don't want to say that. He's going to get a lot of people into winning some games this year because he's going to catch a lot of people by surprise early.
Why is it spicy, Brant? That is a very, very hot take, my friend. Ezekiel Elliott coming back from the dead to be a fantasy relevant running back, according to Brant.
That's a cold one. That's a little one for me.
Okay, then I can't wait to hear the rest of them. I'm going to start off with mine that I think is slightly spicy because it doesn't bear a whole lot of fantasy relevancy on the surface. And that's, I think, Daniel Jones gets shelved by the New York Football Giants at some point this season, sooner rather than later. I think one of you and I's favorite backup quarterbacks in the league, and Drew Lock ends up taking over that team. I think he's a really good fit for the Brian Dable system. And listen, the days of streaming Daniel Jones as a quarterback, they're just gross, Brant. In 2023, he only played in a half season, so the injury played a part. Only 160 attempted passes, 108 completions, 909 yards passing, 2 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, a 1-to-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Now, if you go back and look at Daniel Jones, he was drafted in 2019. That was his rookie season. That was also his career best year, Brant, was his rookie season. He completed 284 out of 459 passes for 3,027 yards and 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Still a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. I think Brian Daboll coaches for his career. I think Daniel Jones is on a short leash this year. The weapons are better in New York. I think it's either put up or shut up time for Daniel Jones, and I do think he ends up getting benched. Why is this relevant to fantasy? I think Drew Lock comes in and those pass catchers get a slight upgrade. Not great. I'm not going on record saying Daniel Jones or Drew Lock is going to be some, flash Geno-esque revival of his career. I'm not calling for that. I'm just thinking he's going to throw a better ball. He's going to be more accurate than Daniel Jones is, and it will be better for guys like Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson and the other Jalen Hyatts of the world. I think so. There you go, Grant. My slight, very minimal burn, like Cajun seasoning-esque flavor on this is Daniel Jones getting benched.
Okay, I liked it. Drew Lock came in and he was very serviceable for Seattle last year when Geno was banged up. So I really do like him coming in. I think that Drew does have a chance to be the future starter in that offense, and it could be as early as this year. All right, so I'm going to save this one. Everyone's sleeping on this guy, so I'm going to save this one for a minute. Let's go with a little rookie love here. Little rookie love. This wide receiver is going to finish in the top 3 of rookie wide receivers. That's Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin is going to come in. He's going to finish as a top 3 rookie wide receiver. I know this one's not as spicy as everything else. He gets to stay with his quarterback from in college. The last player to do that, Jamar Chase. Wow, tongue-tied here. With Cincy. Now, I'm not saying this guy's as good as Jamar Chase. Don't quote me on that. Chase came out, but he already had the chemistry there. Cortland Sutton's already talking about holding out possibly. Yeah, he showed up to OTAs, but he hasn't shown up to anything else. So the chemistry's already there with Nix. Mm-hmm. If Sutton sits out and Franklin becomes the number 1 guy there, let's talk about their division. The Chargers and the Chiefs. Just 2 teams in that division that you have to see twice. So 4 games. You're probably playing in a shootout type game. So they're going to have to air the ball out. And I absolutely think Troy Franklin will finish as a top 3 rookie wide receiver. I think he'll pass. I'm not going to limit. I think it's Neighbors and Harrison that's above him, but I think he passes everybody else this year. And I think he becomes one of the guys that we're talking about like, wow, maybe we're talking breaking some records for the team for rookie receptions. I don't want to say NFL records or anything, but I think you're talking about Troy Franklin bursting onto the scene. And in most redraft leagues, this is going to be a waiver wire pickup, I promise you.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, Brant. I think the door is open for this to be a possibility too, because you look at guys like people are say, well, what about Rome Odunze? Well, he's number 3 on his team in the depth chart. Playing with a rookie quarterback also who, yeah, there's some chemistry there because they got to be good friends, but there's no reason for Caleb Williams to hyper-target Rome versus Keenan Allen or DJ Moore. Then you got Brian Thomas. There's all kinds of question marks still around Trevor Lawrence. Who's the 1 in that offense? Who's the 2? Is Brian Thomas used more than Gabe Davis, who they also went out and signed like immediately into free agency, and you still have Christian Kirk on that roster as well. And then really, if you talk about the wide receivers from this rookie class, Brant, after those big 4 in the Harrison, Neighbors, Odunze, and then Brian Thomas, it's kind of wide open. And if you talk about which one had the best fit, went to the best spot to succeed year 1, I'm going to go with the guy who's already got the established chemistry with his quarterback, going to a team with a coach in Sean Payton, who we've seen do some wonderful things with some wide receivers in the past. I buy into this one a little bit, Brant. I definitely see a world in which I will go a little safer than what you did, where I think he could be the number one in his offense pretty easily, which I think does open the door for him to be the number 3 in the class. So I love that one as well. And you and I both, in a team we took over, an orphan team, we co-owned together. We kind of sewed the bag to go get Troy Franklin. So we're kind of holding out hope that you're right on that one. So I like that one. I'm going to talk about a rookie wide receiver as well, Brant, but this is inadvertently talking about a rookie wide receiver here. I'm going to talk about Kyler Murray, who bounces back as a top 10 quarterback this season for fantasy. Kyler Murray only played 8 games last year, but in those 8 games, Brant, 50% of them was quarterback 1 or around that area. Last week, even on the weeks, the 40 or 50% where he wasn't a quarterback 1, meaning top 12, he was right there. So, again, super close with Kyler last year, but I think people have starting to forget about K1 a little bit. He's not nearly as exciting because you've got guys like Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson balling out every year. Jalen Hurts is kind of doing his thing now as well. Kyler Murray's kind of getting slept on, and kind of rightfully so. The weapons haven't been that great in years past. But here we are, Brant. We're talking about a guy who his tight end, everybody is super excited for, and Trey McBride. Trey McBride is currently being drafted as the first pick in the 3rd round in Dynasty Startup Superflex drafts. And then you've got to add his new weapon, Brant, who a lot of people are speculating could be the next big thing at the wide receiver position, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's currently the 6th pick in the 1st round in startup drafts. So, again, you're talking about 2 players going super early at their respective positions. It only makes sense that if America's buying in on Trey McBride as a tight end and Marvin Harrison Jr. as a wide receiver, we got to start putting some respect back on K1's name here. Kyler Murray's going to have a bounce back season. Not to mention, Brant, he's got that Konami code that everybody loves for fantasy. He runs very effectively. He's kind of fun when he gets out of the pocket. I know you love Deuce Vaughn. Again, your love for Deuce Vaughn was reaffirmed in last year's Hot Takes. You brought him up in that episode as well. So you definitely do love Deuce Vaughn. There's no denying that. However, Deuce taking off and running out of the backfield is very, very similar looking to Kyler Murray. They're both the same height and same build. But also the last couple things I want to add to this is out of Kyler's 5 seasons in the NFL so far, Brant, 3 of them he's been quarterback 10 or better in PPR finishes. So he's had a couple injury-prone years here, which, that does yield us to make some questions. Can he stand up to a full season? We'll see. But injuries aside, I think he's a top 10 quarterback. And what a steal he would be at his current ADP, Brant. He's currently going as the fourth pick in the 7th round right now in Superflex startups. So you got to put some respect back on Kyler's name, Brant.
Absolutely. There's the sky's the limit when it comes to Kyler and being able to move on. We've seen it so many times before, and so it'll be fun to watch this year. I'm not completely sold on the way the offense is going to look, but it's definitely going to be fun. And I do think Kyler Murray does finish up there and is a steal in most drafts this year. So I do like Kyler Murray finishing inside the top 10.
Okay.
All right. So you may think this next one I am talking about a rookie wide receiver, but I'm not. I'm talking about an old savvy veteran that came into the Buffalo Bills, and that is Curtis Samuel. I believe that Curtis Samuel will lead the Bills wideouts in receptions and yards. I also believe that he will finish inside the top 25 overall in wide receivers. Samuel had 6 games as a top 24 wideout last year with Sam Howell throwing the ball and whoever else was back there. Now he gets Josh Allen with one of the most vacated targets, the most vacated air yards. As of right now, Samuel looks like a better route runner than Coleman right now. I think Curtis Samuel becomes Josh Allen's favorite target early, and he's looking for him out of the slot, and I think he finishes as a top 25 overall wideout. And I believe that he's going to be one of the greatest late-round ads in startups. He might be on some waivers in Dynasty just because he was a free agent redraft leagues, I love Curtis Samuel going forward this year. I think that he has found himself a nice home, and I think that they're going to establish lots of chemistry, and that's who he's going to look for with all those vacated targets that Diggs left.
Yeah, I mean, man, you talk about some targets and some impactful targets that are available. Being the number one wideout for Josh Allen is pretty huge. Ask Stephon Diggs the last several years, and Stephon Diggs owners have been very blessed. And you're absolutely right. I think Keon Coleman's the guy eventually, Brant, but I don't know if that happens this season. I could see a world where he's a little raw and it takes some time to develop him in that Buffalo system. I will go on record and say I still think Dalton Kincaid is the man in Buffalo, but I think you're absolutely right. I like Curtis Samuel, and let's be honest, Brant, there's going to be a top 24 option in that receiving course somewhere just based on passing volume alone that's going to happen in that offense. I love this take, Brant.
All right.
I'm going to save my wide receiver take for last because I think you're going to get me. It's going to be the spiciest, and I think you're going to get me, on a hyped up level of planet on that one. So I'm going to go with my passionate take here that's near and dear to my home. And I think a lot of folks are kind of on board with this, so I don't think it's going to be as spicy, Brant. But that's Kyle Pitts to be a top 5 tight end. America's drafting him right now as the 6th tight end off the board, so America kind of feels the same way I do. Here's the thing. Last year, Kyle Pitts, almost every year, Kyle Pitts has kind of not performed, and it almost kind of feels like, I'm going to bring it up again because it's relevant. Last year, I kind of stood on some business and said I thought Cam Akers was going to be a guy who was going to break out last year. How many years in a row did people hold out hope Cam Akers was going to break out and be something? And it just never happened, and eventually it fell flat on its face with all of us that were on board with it. Kyle Pitts walking into this year feels an awful lot like that, Grant. Like, if it doesn't happen this year, it's never going to happen for him.
Mm-hmm.
Barring some kind of an injury, which then still will tank his fantasy value. But anyway, 90 targets last year from the likes of Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. That's worse than Sam Howell and whoever else was throwing the ball in Washington last year for sure, right? Only 3 touchdowns on the season for Kyle Pitts, and I think this is one of the biggest reasons I buy in on him. Arthur Smith's bull crap play calling in the red zone, his little cute gimmicky plays, is gone. That's Pittsburgh's problem now. Raheem Morris, love him, don't love him, think it was a bad hire. He's not going to be getting cute in the red zone. He's going to try to win football games. He's going to try to establish his name. He's not going to come out and say, hey, my way is the best way ever. If he did, he wouldn't have hired such a big name offensive coordinator in Zach Robinson, who was sought after by a lot of the league for OC. I think Raheem Morris is going to be smart. He's going to say, hey, let's throw them jump balls, them back corner fades to guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and the touchdown equity is going to be through the roof for Kyle Pitts this year. And the last thing that, it's just a small thing for Kyle Pitts is he does get a massive, massive quarterback upgrade in Kirk Cousins over Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke. So again, everything's pointing in the direction for Kyle Pitts takeoff this year. If it doesn't happen this year, Brant, it's probably never going to.
Yeah, I agree. I'm buying into the hype of Kyle Pitts too. I've been trying to swing some trades out there, and nobody wants to bite. I mean, in most of my leagues, he's owned by a Falcons fan, so it's kind of hard to get. But yeah, he's a guy that I definitely am looking forward to watching this year. That offense is going to be fun with Kirk Cousins, and if he's not ready, it's going to be fun with old Michael Penix too, because I'm going to be sitting there cheering him on because I'm not going to let that die young.
It is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Here comes my spicy. This one's going to cause a whole lot of ruckus. I hope people are listening, and please give me your feedback. I'd love to hear this. I'd love to take a few shots like Bo did when he put out his DJ Moore take. I would like to take a couple shots as Puka Nacua falls outside of the top 15 wide receivers this year. He's being drafted as like wide receiver 5 or 6. I believe the Rams offense is going to struggle, and Puka's going to be the one of the worst the worst beneficiaries of it. I think he's going to take a huge downgrade. I think he's going to come back to his earth. Remember, this guy was drafted in the 5th round. He was overlooked and passed on by every team in the NFL. So there's got to be some flaws. He's not going to bring anybody by surprise this year. Teams are going to plan for him as the number one. Is he even good enough to technically be the number one? Because here's how it came out. Puka only finished inside the top 10 of wideouts 2 times when Cooper Kupp was in the lineup. Cooper Kupp missed four games, I think, last year, maybe 5.
Mm-hmm.
So he only, out of those games, 12 games, he only finished inside the top 10 2 times. Puka was the number 2 in targets all time for rookies. He had 160. He was number 2 to Mr. Bolden, who had 165 in 2003. I did look that up. It was kind of interesting to be looking up. So it took him 160 targets. And then he broke the rookie record for receptions. But like I said, he's not going to catch anybody by surprise. I think they're really going to be ready to exploit his flaws and everything in his route running and everything else. And I honestly believe Puka Nacua, this is a guy that I'm avoiding in a lot of drafts. I think Cooper Kupp regains his role as the number 1 because he's going to fall to the 2 and teams are going to plan for Puka Nacua. So I think Cooper Kupp's going to be the beneficiary of a lot of this. And he's back to 100% healthy. So I think Kupp is the one who's the owning here. And I think Puka falls outside of the top 15.
Let's talk about this one just a little bit deeper here for a second, if you will, Brant, because I do agree. And right now, Puka Nacua, he's currently the 7th wide receiver off the board as of today. So some names in front of him, the obvious 3, obviously. St. Brown, Harrison, Tyreek Hill round out. So Puka's at 7. Here's my problem, Brant. If you're not 100% in on Puka Nacua, how do you draft him in front of Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Chris Olave, Malik Neighbors, Drake London, guys that I expect to have huge seasons this year? How do you justifiably take Puka in front of those guys unless you're and I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not 100% in. I'm skeptical. I think a lot of this had to do with, the Rams offense wasn't as great or it was way better than we thought it was. Maybe that's a fluke. I don't know. A lot of us thought the Rams offense was going to take a step back. He did establish that early chemistry. How healthy was Cooper Kupp when he did come back? I think there's a lot of factors that go into this, Brant. And personally, I can't get on board with taking him in front of some of those names. And I feel like he's being drafted at his ceiling. That's the scary part. I feel like you drafting him at wide receiver 7 is about the best you could hope for with him, because you're right. With a healthy Cooper Kupp for a full 17-game slate, he's not getting the same amount of targets that he got last year. He's not going to have the same amount of receptions. So then everything else comes down as well. Puka Nacua scares the absolute hell out of me, Brant. I'm going to be honest.
Let's just talk about the first 2 weeks that Cooper Kupp missed. 15 and 20 targets, 10 and 15 receptions. That was just the first 2 weeks. Yeah, those are great to start out with. Then you had a week of 5 and 7, 5 receptions, 7 targets. And then Kupp comes back, and I want to say this is the second week Kupp was back. 7 targets, 4 receptions, 26 yards. Finished as the wide receiver 58. Kupp's back. Wide receiver 62, wide receiver 55. Wide receiver 64. Inside all those games, he had a wide receiver 5 and a wide receiver 12. I just don't see it. Yeah, you exploded onto the scene and you had some great games. But you also had some games of 7, 8, 7, 7, 12. Yeah, I don't see you finishing inside the top 15 when I expect Garrett Wilson. I expect A.J. Brown. I expect Devonta Smith. I expect Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both to have great years. I don't see how Puka can finish inside. I think you're drafting above his ceiling. Honestly, I think we saw his ceiling last year was 4. I don't think he reaches that pinnacle again.
Would you put 2 Denver Broncos wide receivers over Puka
Not this year.
Nacua?
Not this year. Come at me next year. We'll talk Troy Franklin.
All right. Sounds good. All right. I'm coming at you with my one that I'm going to get on my soapbox with this one a little bit, Brant. I've got Rashee Rice to finish as a top 12 wide receiver. So wide receiver 1. Listen, everybody's like, oh, my God, he's had the worst offseason of all time. No, he hasn't. He has not had the worst offseason of all time. It's not a thing. He's not going to have that bad of an offseason. And we've seen one thing with the NFL that we know is true. they're slow as heck when it comes to suspensions, Brant. They drag their feet, they wait for the legal things to get settled, they wait for court to get settled, and then they come out with a suspension that usually is pretty light. See Alvin Kamara, who made it a full season and a half before his suspensions came out, basically. In 2023, Rashee Rice had 102 targets, 79 receptions, 938 yards, 7 touchdowns, finished the season as wide receiver 27. Here's what I really love about Rashee Rice, Brent, is he built chemistry with Patrick Mahomes last year, who is the best quarterback in the National Football League right now. And on top of that, it got to a point where there were some weeks he was out targeting Travis Kelce, which I thought was interesting. And here's where it really gets interesting to me, Brant. In the playoffs, when it matters most, Patrick Mahomes looked Rashee Rice's way 12 times in the wild card, 4 times in the divisional, 9 times in the AFC Championship, and 8 times in the Super Bowl. This guy has got the trust and the love from Patrick Mahomes, Brant. And yes, I think, the offseason stuff's been horrible. It's not been great, but I think you're going to see him come out and put a product on the field that's going to make people forget or stop talking about the offseason stuff. And here's the other thing that I think is huge. So, first of all, he's the 30th wide receiver going off the board right now, Brant. So he's coming off the board 3 spots lower than where he finished as a rookie, okay, which is kind of blasphemous to me. Who's going 2 spots in front of him? Rookie wide receiver Xavier Worthy, who I think may be one of the most gimmicky players in NFL history. Yes, if you're going to be a gimmicky player, he went to the right spot where I think he's got a head coach and a quarterback that can utilize that gimmicky, playability. Rashee Rice did it last year. He did it, and he had a slow start to start the year out, Brant. But he ended, just weeks on fire. I remember when we were in Atlanta, we went and watched that Falcons-Tampa Bay game. We went back to our Airbnb, and we put that Buffalo Bills Chiefs game on, and it just seemed like every time Patrick Mahomes threw the ball, it was going to Rashee Rice in that game. Kadarius Toney did have some costly mistakes down the stretch in that one as well, which, names like Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and Marquez Valdes-Scantling are the reasons why Rashee Rice had as many targets as he did. But I think Marquise Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy are going to be better than those guys that were on the field last year, but that's just going to create more space for Rashee Rice. Xavier Worthy is going to stretch the field. There's going to be a lot of room to operate underneath for, guys like Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. I can't wait to see this Chiefs offense in play this year, Brant. I think this may be one of the best offenses we've seen in a long, long time. And I think Rashee Rice benefits from that, and to the tune of a wide receiver 1 at the season's end.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be one there, and Kelsey's getting older, and you and me have talked about this kind of on the side. I don't know if we've in depth, but I think Kelsey takes a step back. I think you see Noah Gray out there a little more. They got Irv Smith they re-signed. I think you start to see some of the other tight ends getting rolled out there. So Kelsey's isn't going to be as big of a threat to Rashee Rice as he was last year. Worthy, I'm not sold on. I wasn't so cool, man. You're fast, and you're fast. You make fast people look not so fast. You make me look like I'm walking, which I normally am.
Backwards.
But can you catch? Like, I've seen some of your film, and you get up there and you make some decent catches, but I feel like you're about to be an MVS too. You're not. Rashee Rice is the guy there, and I absolutely love him. You and me went out and we traded for him. He's a guy that is definitely going to, and he's linked to Mahomes for dynasty leagues for what, at least 2 more years.
Yeah.
So this guy is absolutely the sky's the limit for him, and I think he definitely finishes right around that 12 spot. I'm not going to put him much higher than that, but I definitely think he can be right there at that 12 spot.
Listen, I want to put this out into the universe too, so it exists. There's no take backs. Can't reach out there and grab it and pull it back. You put you and I on the starting line after a full day of stretching, so we're not tearing any hammies, at the Golden Corral and give us a 20-yard head start. We might both beat Xavier Worthy, especially if we're on an empty tank.
It's true.
If I'm real hungry, I'm gonna put some speed out there.
I bet I will out-eat him. I bet I'll out-eat him.
You gotta have those stretchy pants on, the Velcro shoes. You gotta be in business, right? We wouldn't be standing on it, but we'd be forking on business in that.
That's right. That's right.
But anyway, hot takes, guys. if you listen to this, let us know. Hey, are we absolutely crazy, or do you agree with one of us? Yeah, Brand, I could see that one happening. Or yeah, Bo, whatever. You're dumb. That's another DJ Moore take. We can take it. We get off on that stuff. Come holler at us. It definitely makes this a lot more interesting for us to be able to discuss what you think of our hot takes. Maybe we're not alone in our craze here.
Right. Absolutely. This is always a fun episode. Next week, we'll be back to our normal day, hopefully back on Wednesday, scheduling, vacation, stuff like that. I have a vacation coming up, but we'll work around that. But yeah, starting next week, we should be back to Wednesdays, at least for the next 2 weeks. Not sure what we're going to get on. Mock drafts are always out there that we haven't touched yet. We got to recap a little bit on our rookie, our fans versus Holics draft. So the next 2 weeks, we'll put our heads together and try to figure it out. But as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.